June 18th, 1944. Outside Berlin, the morning fog lingered over the grounds of a heavily guarded Wehrmacht ordnance testing facility. Hopman Claus Ritor, a senior weapons officer with 39 years of service, walked among crates of captured firearms, his polished boots crunching softly against frost-damp gravel. The previous weeks had brought in shipments from Normandy, Tunisia, and Sicily, but today his attention was captured by a single crate, smaller than the others, its wood worn and the stenciled markings faint. Inside lay a weapon Ritor had only read about in reports and intelligence bulletins, the American M1 Garand. Its dark walnut stock was streaked with dried mud and sand, evidence of recent combat on the beaches of France. The rifle seemed unassuming, almost elegant, yet Ritor felt an uneasy thrill. The reports had been unsettling. German infantrymen, accustomed to the disciplined cadence of their Kar-98K bolt-action rifles, had described a rate of fire from these Americans that seemed impossible. Normally, a well-trained rifleman could achieve perhaps 15 aimed shots per minute, accounting for the precise manipulation of the bolt between each round. But the Americans, using the M1 Garand, reportedly delivered a volume of fire that resembled light machine guns. Even seasoned officers had expressed disbelief. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ritor's assistant, Lieutenant Weber, a meticulous man of 34, followed closely, carrying the crate with careful hands. Weber had grown accustomed to examining captured weapons, yet there was a visible tension in his posture today. The M1 Garand was no ordinary rifle. He set it on the testing bench, aligning it under the overhead lights, its barrel gleaming faintly despite the caked mud. Ritor knelt, inspecting the mechanism. "Gas-operated, semi-automatic," he muttered, almost to himself, his fingers tracing the contours of the operating rod and bolt. We shall see if these reports hold merit. The room was silent except for the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards and the muffled echoes of activity outside the reinforced walls. The rifle was carefully loaded with an 8-round en-bloc clip, each round seated with precision. Ritor raised the M1 to his shoulder, aligning it with the test target 20 meters away. His breath steadied. He had spent decades assessing rifles, calculating trajectories, and analyzing ballistic performance. What he was about to witness, however, was beyond conventional expectation. He squeezed the trigger once. The rifle recoiled with a smooth, almost effortless motion. Another round discharged immediately, without any manual intervention. 8 rounds erupted in rapid succession, each chambered automatically, the metallic ping of the empty clip echoing sharply across the testing bay. Weber's eyes widened, and he took an involuntary step back. Did it just fire 8 rounds that fast?" he whispered, barely audible. Even the most seasoned engineers present could not hide their astonishment. The M1 Garand, in the hands of a single soldier, had already proven to deliver firepower far beyond the capability of their standard infantry rifles. Ritor lowered the rifle and examined the spent clip, noting the precision of its ejection and the simplicity of its mechanism. The implications were immediate and profound. If a single rifleman could fire as quickly as this, a standard American squad could deliver 3 times the sustained fire of a German squad armed with Kar-98Ks. The engineers exchanged looks, understanding that this weapon was not merely a new rifle, but a revolution in infantry combat. Every bolt, every gas port, and every moving part had been designed for rugged reliability and simplicity. Dirt, mud, and temperature extremes that might disable other semi-automatic rifles had little effect on the M1's operation. In this moment, Ritor realized that what they were witnessing was a combination of superior engineering and tactical advantage, an elegant design that multiplied the effectiveness of every American soldier who carried it. For decades, armies had relied on bolt-action rifles. The rhythm of infantry combat was predictable. Aim, fire, manipulate the bolt, chamber a fresh round, and repeat. Machine guns supplemented this pattern, providing sustained fire when necessary, but they were heavy, cumbersome, and required a team to operate efficiently. The M1 Garand disrupted this balance. By automating the bolt cycling process through a gas-operated mechanism, it allowed each rifleman to sustain fire at a rate previously achievable only by machine guns. The Germans had encountered semi-automatic rifles before, but none matched the reliability or the simplicity of the Garand. Every part seemed designed to survive the harshest conditions while remaining operable by soldiers with minimal training. Ritor and Weber ran the initial tests methodically. Each round fired from the M1 struck within a narrow margin on the target, demonstrating accuracy comparable to the Kar 98K. The difference, however, was the volume of fire. Where a German rifleman required 2 to 3 seconds between each shot to operate the bolt, the American could fire successive rounds almost as quickly as he could pull the trigger. The timing was astonishing, 8 rounds in under 12 seconds, with every shot aimed and effective. The room hummed with quiet awe. The metallic ping of the empty clip seemed almost musical in its rhythm, a sound that would echo in their minds long after the tests concluded. After several repetitions, Ritor stepped back from the bench. "This is not merely a rifle," he said, his voice measured but tinged with disbelief. "This is a force multiplier. Our infantry doctrine did not account for every soldier having the rate of fire of a light machine gun. We have underestimated the impact of the American industrial and engineering capability." Weber nodded silently, still staring at the bench where the rifle rested. "It is more than engineering," he replied. "It is a lesson in efficiency, and it is a problem we cannot solve quickly." The German engineers documented every aspect of the weapon. Measurements were taken of the gas cylinder, the operating rod, and the camming surfaces of the bolt. Each part was dissected and examined, revealing the elegant simplicity of the design. The operating rod moved in a precise arc, engaging the bolt and unlocking it during recoil. Spent cartridges were ejected automatically, while a new round was stripped from the clip and chambered. The sequence repeated flawlessly with every test. Even under rapid fire, the Garand did not jam or falter, a feat that German engineers had struggled to replicate in their own semi-automatic rifles. The Gewehr 41 and 43, while promising in concept, were prone to reliability issues, particularly under field conditions. The M1 Garand, by contrast, functioned without error. Field observations reinforced the technical findings. Reports from North Africa, where American forces had engaged Axis units in Tunisia, indicated that rifle squads could maintain suppressive fire at a tempo previously thought impossible. Commanders noted that defensive positions often crumbled under this sustained rate of fire, as German troops could not effectively return fire against multiple targets without exposing themselves to rapid and precise American rifle fire. The disparity was tactical, measurable, and persistent. By the time the German infantry could adapt, the Americans had already advanced, maneuvered, or secured critical objectives. Ritor considered the industrial implications. The M1 was not only mechanically superior, but also designed for PROX, large-scale production. The American approach to manufacturing precision machining combined with standardized parts meant that millions of Garands could be produced reliably. By 1944, American factories were delivering rifles at a rate that outpaced any attempt by Germany to equip its forces with equivalent semi-automatic weapons. Even if the Wehrmacht could reverse engineer the mechanism, the combination of resource constraints, labor shortages, and Allied bombing made mass production at a comparable scale unattainable. The room fell silent as Ritter and Weber observed the rifle once more. The implications extended beyond individual engagements. Every squad equipped with M1 Garands had the capability to outgun and outmaneuver German infantry, even those with superior training or defensive positions. The semi-automatic system allowed American riflemen to maintain a near-constant stream of accurate fire, disrupting enemy formations, forcing retreats, and providing opportunities for flanking maneuvers. In essence, the rifle reshaped the battlefield calculus. Tactical assumptions, previously based on the known cadence of bolt-action fire, were now obsolete. Weber, finally breaking the silence, said, "It is a revolution in the hands of the common soldier. Each man is now a force of 3. Ritor nodded, his expression grave. "And we are facing it on multiple fronts. Tunisia, Sicily, Normandy. This is not an isolated anomaly. This is the standard American infantry." They spent the remainder of the morning firing controlled volleys, recording velocities, impact points, and ejection patterns. Every shot reinforced the extraordinary nature of the design. The 8-round clip ejected automatically with a metallic ping, signaling readiness for the next clip insertion. Soldiers in combat could replace clips in seconds and continue firing, a capability that Germany had no equivalent for at the squad level. By the afternoon, engineers attempted to replicate the firing cycle using German semi-automatic prototypes. The Gewehr 41 was tested in successive iterations, but each attempt revealed the limitations of the design: complex maintenance, susceptibility to jamming, and inconsistent performance under rapid fire. The M1 Garand, by contrast, operated flawlessly even under accelerated firing conditions. Ritor's notes grew increasingly detailed, recording every functional superiority of the American rifle. Gas pressure, bolt cam angles, and operating rod tolerances were documented meticulously. The conclusion was unavoidable. The Germans had encountered a weapon that combined reliability, rapid-fire capability, and mass production potential in a single package. As the sun set behind the Berlin skyline, the final tests concluded. The M1 Garand rested on the bench, silent but undeniably potent. Ritor and Weber stepped back, understanding that this rifle had fundamentally changed the nature of infantry warfare. Where the Kar-98K required constant manual operation, limiting the sustained rate of fire, the Garand allowed a soldier to maintain a near-continuous stream of aimed shots. The implications for combat, tactics, and military doctrine were immense. German engineers could study the design, attempt to replicate it, and refine their own weapon systems, but the advantage had already been established. American industrial might, combined with superior small arms engineering, had created a weapon that would define engagements in Europe and North Africa for years to come. Ritor finally spoke, almost to himself. "We underestimated the Americans. This is not merely a rifle, it is a statement of what industry, ingenuity, and tactical doctrine can achieve together." Weber nodded in solemn agreement. The metallic ping of the empty en-bloc clip seemed to echo through the empty testing hall, a reminder that one simple sound could signify a revolution in infantry warfare. As the night settled over the facility, the M1 Garand lay ready, unassuming yet revolutionary, a testament to human ingenuity and a harbinger of the tactical shifts yet to come. By the end of the evening, the full implications of their observations became clear. The American soldier, armed with the M1 Garand, had the capability to deliver sustained fire that the German infantry could not match with standard rifles. Each rifle was not just a weapon, it was a force multiplier, a tactical equalizer, and a harbinger of the industrial and battlefield supremacy that would define engagements for the remainder of the war. In the hands of a skilled soldier, the M1 Garand transformed conventional expectations of rate of fire, accuracy, and reliability into a cohesive and devastatingly effective tool of war. Hopman Claus Ritor walked slowly around the testing bench, his polished boots echoing faintly against the concrete floor of the ordnance facility outside Berlin. The morning fog had long dissipated, leaving a crisp clarity over the compound, but inside, a heavier fog of disbelief seemed to hang over the room. His eyes never left the M1 Garand, the American rifle lying on the bench as if it were a living thing, imbued with intelligence. "Think of it," he murmured quietly, almost to himself. "A single soldier can deliver firepower equivalent to an entire squad of our carabiner 98Ks. He paused, letting the words hang in the stale air. then added with a hard edge, "And every American infantryman carries one." The weight of the statement settled on him, pressing harder than the rifle's walnut stock or the cold steel barrel beneath his fingers. He ran his hand along the polished wood, imagining the countless soldiers in France, Italy, and North Africa, each wielding this same weapon, each capable of sustaining a volume of fire that would take several of his own men to match. Reports from Tunisia and Sicily had already hinted at the devastating advantage the Americans held, but nothing could prepare him for seeing it firsthand. In the olive groves of North Africa, German advisors had observed entire American squads advancing methodically, their rifles producing a near-constant hail of bullets. The sounds were unnerving, a staccato rhythm unlike anything produced by their own infantry. Initially, observers assumed machine guns were involved, automatic weapons mounted on bipods and fired by teams. But after the engagements, meticulous analysis of spent casings revealed the truth. Each American soldier had been firing semi-automatically, with a standard-issue rifle, no teams. No tripod-mounted machine guns. Each man alone was capable of delivering firepower that defied conventional understanding. The realization had spread slowly among the officers. In Tunisia, it was first dismissed as rumor. By Sicily, the reports were detailed and corroborated, and now, at the Berlin testing center, Ritor held the evidence in his own hands. The design of the M1 Garand was elegant in its simplicity, a mechanical symphony of function and reliability. Gas diverted from the muzzle travelled into a small cylinder, striking a piston that drove the operating rod rearward. The bolt rotated, unlocking from the receiver, ejecting the spent cartridge with a metallic ping that reverberated against the concrete walls. Simultaneously, the compressed operating rod spring pushed the bolt forward, chambering a fresh round, ready for the next shot. All of this occurred in a fraction of a second. One pull of the trigger, and the cycle repeated seamlessly. No manual work, no pause to manipulate a bolt, no time lost to friction or fatigue. A well-trained rifleman could fire the entire 8-round clip in under 12 seconds, each round aimed and effective. In contrast, a German soldier using a Kar 98K, even the most disciplined and skilled, required approximately 4 seconds per shot, including working the bolt. The disparity was staggering. A single squad of 8 Americans could maintain sustained fire that the Germans could not hope to counter without deploying multiple squads or heavier weapons. Ritor tapped his knuckles lightly against the table, a subtle gesture betraying his mounting concern. "Even if we reverse engineer this," he muttered, the words tinged with both curiosity and frustration, "can we match their production?" His mind calculated rapidly, running through the numbers of factories, workforce availability, raw materials, and logistical limitations. Germany's industrial capacity was already stretched thin across multiple fronts: Poland, the Eastern Front, the Italian campaign, and the Atlantic defences. The semi-automatic rifles they had experimented with, the Gewehr 41 and 43, had proven temperamental. In field conditions, both were prone to jamming, required delicate maintenance, and often failed when exposed to dirt, sand, or cold. By contrast, the M1 functioned flawlessly under the same conditions. Mud, heat, or frost barely affected its operation. Its simplicity, reliability, and ease of maintenance made it a weapon that could be trusted in the chaos of combat. The gap was tactical as much as it was mechanical. He paused, eyes narrowing as he considered the broader implications. "We've never faced anything like this," he said aloud, the statement carrying a rare tremor of unease. "Our doctrine assumes bolt-action rifles. Our machine guns cover sustained fire. But these Americans, they've changed everything." He envisioned the battlefield, the rolling hills of Normandy, the olive groves of Tunisia, the beaches of Sicily. German soldiers trained to expect intervals of return fire, to anticipate pauses between rounds to advance or maneuver. That rhythm, that predictability, was shattered by the M1. Now, Every American rifleman could maintain a near-continuous stream of aimed fire, suppressing positions, forcing retreats, and enabling rapid tactical movement. The semi-automatic rifle had transformed the individual soldier into a force multiplier, a capability previously reserved for specialized units or heavy weapon teams. Lieutenant Weber shifted uneasily, his notebook clutched tightly in one hand. "Hopman, if each man fires like this—" His voice trailed off, the implication clear. Ritor turned slowly, his gaze piercing. "Yes, Weber," he said. "If each man fires like this, it undermines every principle we rely on. Defensive positions that would normally hold under concentrated rifle fire can now be overrun by half the forces we would deploy. Entire flanks could be suppressed, bridges seized, and advance routes secured with fewer troops." He stepped back, pacing slowly around the room, hands behind his back. "It is not just a weapon, it is a tactical revolution." The engineers began running further tests, firing successive rounds, measuring velocity, recoil, and ejection patterns. Each round reinforced the conclusions drawn from previous reports. Even under continuous rapid fire, the Garand never jammed, never faltered, and maintained accuracy comparable to the bolt-action Kar-98K. The rate of fire effectively tripled that of a trained German rifleman, and the rifle could be reloaded in seconds by inserting a fresh 8-round clip. The implications for prolonged engagements were staggering. In a conventional firefight, a squad of Americans armed with M1s could lay down a sustained barrage that would force German units to take cover, retreat, or deploy heavier weapons unnecessarily. This was not a marginal advantage, it was decisive. Ritor's mind raced further, considering the broader operational and strategic consequences. Every engagement where American infantry wielded M1 Garands became inherently asymmetrical. German command structures relied on predictable intervals of enemy fire for coordinated movements, flanking maneuvers, and suppressive tactics. The Garand disrupted this balance. A defensive position, previously thought secure, now became vulnerable under sustained semi-automatic fire from multiple riflemen. Even units equipped with machine guns faced the challenge of supporting their infantry against opponents who could maintain equivalent rates of fire individually. It was a paradigm shift that Germany had neither anticipated nor prepared for. Weber, his pencil moving quickly across his notebook, recorded the numerical findings: rounds per minute, accuracy measurements, ejection cycles, and mechanical tolerances. The data painted a clear picture. Whereas a German rifle squad of 8 could produce roughly 120 aimed rounds per minute, a squad of Americans with M1 Garands could easily deliver 300 to 400 rounds, aimed and accurate. This was a multiplication of combat effectiveness, not through superior numbers, but through superior technology. Ritor noted the psychological implications as well. German soldiers, hearing the constant rattle of American rifles, might assume they faced an entire company or multiple machine guns. The effect on morale, discipline, and operational confidence could be as decisive as the physical firepower itself. He considered the engineering marvel in more detail, tracing the mechanics with gloved hands. The gas port, drilled precisely near the muzzle, directed expanding gases into the operating rod, driving it rearward. The bolt cammed open, ejecting spent casings and allowing the spring to chamber a fresh round. The sequence repeated perfectly with every trigger pull. Unlike their own semi-automatic rifles, which required meticulous adjustments, the Garand's design tolerated dirt, mud, and irregular ammunition, continuing to function reliably in conditions that would incapacitate most German designs. This was a product not only of ingenuity, but of thoughtful engineering aligned with practical combat needs. It was designed to work in the hands of ordinary soldiers under extraordinary conditions. Ritor stepped back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Our own semi-automatic programs are too complex, too fragile," he said. "The Gewehr 41 fails under pressure. The 43 is better, but production is limited. Even if we improve reliability, our factories cannot match American output. The advantage is not merely in design, it is in industrial scale and battlefield application combined. Every American soldier with an M1 is a tactical asset beyond what our doctrine accounts for. He walked to the window of the testing facility, gazing out over the frost-covered grounds, imagining the distant battlefields where these rifles were in action. Tunisia, Sicily, Normandy, all theatres where German units had experienced the unnerving rhythm of sustained semi-automatic fire. Reports detailed American squads advancing with confidence, riflemen maintaining near-continuous fire, forcing German units to retreat, seek cover, or risk annihilation. The difference between their bolt-action rifles and the M1 Garand was more than mechanical. It was transformational. It challenged assumptions, tactics, and the very structure of infantry combat. Weber finally spoke again, his voice low but urgent. "Hopman, if this weapon reaches mass deployment, the entire battlefield changes. We cannot match it with numbers alone. Our tactics must adapt, but adaptation will be slow, costly, and incomplete." Ritor nodded, his mind weighing the realities. And adaptation may come too late. The Americans have combined engineering, industrial capacity, and doctrine to produce a weapon that gives them overwhelming advantage at the squad level. It is a reminder that technology, when aligned with practical application, can redefine warfare entirely. For the rest of the day, Ritor and his team continued their analysis. They disassembled and reassembled the rifle, firing round after round, recording results and calculating implications. Every test confirmed the same reality. The M1 Garand was reliable, efficient, and deadly effective. It was a weapon that could be trusted in the chaos of combat, that multiplied the effectiveness of every man who carried it, and that could not be quickly matched by existing German designs. By evening, the conclusions were undeniable. Germany had encountered a mechanical and tactical revolution in the form of a single rifle. As darkness fell over the ordnance facility, the M1 Garand rested quietly on the bench, its metallic parts gleaming under the dim overhead lights. The room was silent, save for the muffled footsteps of engineers and the occasional metallic ping of testing clamps. Ritor stood over the rifle, considering the implications in full. This weapon was more than a tool. It was a catalyst. It had already reshaped engagements in North Africa, Sicily, and Normandy. It challenged doctrine, disrupted tactics, and multiplied the effectiveness of every soldier. The semi-automatic rifle was no longer a novelty or an experimental curiosity. It was a decisive instrument of modern infantry warfare. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ritor finally spoke, his voice low and measured, carrying the weight of realization. The Americans have given their infantry a capability we cannot hope to match quickly. Their doctrine, combined with industrial might and this weapon, means that each man can deliver firepower that was once the domain of squads or light machine guns. We are witnessing the birth of a new standard in infantry combat. This is a lesson we cannot ignore, and one we will be forced to reckon with on every battlefield for the remainder of this war. Weber, standing silently beside him, understood fully. The numbers, the reports, and the mechanics had all spoken. The tactical landscape had shifted. The M1 Garand was not just a rifle, it was a declaration of American ingenuity and battlefield supremacy, a tool that would define engagements for years to come. The following morning, the testing facility outside Berlin buzzed with cautious anticipation. Hopman Claus Ritor had prepared the next phase, a series of live demonstrations designed to quantify, with precision, the tactical advantage conferred by the M1 Garand. The German engineers had spent weeks analyzing schematics, disassembling the rifles, and theorizing about their capabilities, but nothing could substitute for real-time comparisons. In one corner of the testing bay, a squad of experienced German marksmen had been assembled, each armed with the standard-issue Kar 98K. Their faces were set in determined lines, eyes scanning the room and the array of targets prepared for them. The men were among the Wehrmacht's finest, chosen for steady hands, accurate aim, and rigorous discipline. They represented the pinnacle of German infantry training, yet even their presence did not quell the tension in the air. Ritor, clipboard in hand, spoke quietly to Lieutenant Weber. "Observe carefully. This is not just about accuracy. It is about the rhythm of fire, the sustainability of combat efficiency." Weber nodded, pen poised, eyes following every motion. "Gentlemen," Ritor addressed the marksman, "your task is simple. Fire continuously, maintaining accuracy, as if you were under combat conditions. Record your results carefully." The German soldiers loaded their rifles. Each round clicked into the chamber with practiced precision. A stopwatch was set on the bench, and at Ritor's nod, the demonstration began. The men fired in sequence, aiming deliberately, cycling the bolts with the rhythm ingrained through countless drills and years of experience. The sound was measured, methodical, punctuated by the metallic click of spent casings hitting the wooden floor. After 1 full minute, Ritor consulted the stopwatch and the record sheets. The result was immediate and undeniable. Only a fraction of the rounds necessary to match a single M1's potential had been fired. The Kar-98K, for all its reliability and accuracy, could not approach the sustained rate of fire the Americans achieved with a single weapon. Weber exhaled slowly, glancing at the bench, his pen trembling slightly as he noted the disparity. Then, in a separate demonstration, the M1 Garand was placed into the hands of an American volunteer, a prisoner captured during the Normandy engagements. The rifle gleamed under the facility's fluorescent lights, its dark walnut stock still bearing faint traces of mud from the French beaches. The volunteer assumed a firing stance, steady but calm, eyes trained on the targets before him. He loaded the 8-round en-bloc clip and, at Ritor's subtle signal, began to fire. The results were instantaneous and astonishing. 8 rounds discharged in under 12 seconds, each round chambering automatically, each shot aimed with precision and consistency. The metallic ping of the empty clip ejection echoed through the room, a sound both mechanical and almost musical in its simplicity. Ritor and Weber bent forward, counting the spent shells littering the bench and floor. "It's impossible," Weber muttered, the words barely above a whisper. Ritor did not respond immediately. He simply observed the rifle, tracing its lines and mechanics with a clinical eye, though the weight of the revelation pressed upon him. The M1 was not merely faster, it was fundamentally different. Where the Kar-98K demanded deliberate action between shots, requiring time to work the bolt, chamber a new round, and re-aim, the Garand's semi-automatic mechanism executed these steps automatically, seamlessly integrating them into a continuous cycle of fire. The engineers began meticulously recording the data, noting times, accuracy, and the practical implications. Spreadsheets and handwritten notes were compiled, and reports were prepared for submission to Wehrmacht command. Analysts observed the broader picture. American squads, armed with M1 Garands, could suppress enemy positions effectively, maneuver with unprecedented flexibility, and assault fortified positions with firepower that German units struggled to match. The figures were clear and undeniable. A single M1 rifle delivered approximately 3 times the sustained fire of an equivalent Kar-98K squad. In practical terms, one American squad could hold a defensive line, pin down multiple German units, or advance on entrenched positions while the defenders scrambled to respond. As the day progressed, further tests reinforced the disparity. Multiple American volunteers were brought in, and the results were consistent. The M1 could fire its 8-round clip in under 12 seconds, reload in mere moments, and continue delivering precise, aimed fire. Even under sustained, rapid-fire conditions, the rifle maintained functionality, unaffected by the stress of repeated discharge. Conversely, the The Kar 98K soldiers fatigued more quickly, their rifles requiring manual cycling that disrupted rhythm and exposed them to suppression. The contrast was stark, a tangible illustration of a technological gap that Germany had yet to close. By mid-1944, corroborating reports from the Italian and French fronts confirmed the same pattern. Even elite Wehrmacht troops, trained to operate under fire and adapt to dynamic battlefield conditions, found themselves pinned under relentless M1 fire. Positions that would once have held for hours or days were compromised in minutes. Defensive emplacements became untenable as American squads coordinated their semi-automatic fire, covering each other while advancing or suppressing enemy fire. Commanders noted the psychological impact as well. Soldiers confronted with continuous, rapid fire from multiple directions reported confusion, disorientation, and a profound sense of being overwhelmed. The M1 did more than fire faster. It reshaped the battlefield by imposing a new tempo of combat. Ritor observed the data and calculations, his mind racing through the implications. The German army could not match this advantage simply by training more men or redistributing existing machine guns. The tactical superiority of the M1 was not a marginal gain, it was a multiplication of combat effectiveness at the individual and squad levels. Engineers were ordered to study the rifle in exhaustive detail, reverse engineering its mechanisms, materials, and tolerances. Schematics were drawn, prototypes of experimental semi-automatic rifles were commissioned, but industrial limitations quickly became apparent. Producing sufficient quantities to equip even a single infantry division with reliable semi-automatic rifles was beyond Germany's immediate capacity. Factories were committed to existing production lines, artillery, tanks, ammunition, aircraft. Resources were finite, and every new project required trade-offs that compromise other critical programs. Ritor sighed deeply, a low exhalation that carried both frustration and resignation. Engineering might catch up eventually, he said, speaking to Weber without looking directly at him. But by the time they do, the battlefield advantage will be gone. The Americans will have moved forward, exploited the momentum, and shifted the engagement before we can respond. Weber nodded silently, understanding the reality. The implications extended beyond mechanics. They touched strategy, tactics, and morale. In the hands of a well-trained soldier, the M1 did more than shoot faster. It enabled sustained offensive action, defensive suppression, and maneuver warfare that disrupted German planning at every level. The engineers continued their tests, pushing both rifles to their limits. Kar 98Ks were fired repeatedly, cycling each bolt with meticulous care. Yet the rate of fire remained constrained. The American volunteers' M1 Garand continued to cycle rounds automatically, maintaining a rhythm that no Kar 98K operator could match. Time and again, the comparison was repeated. Each demonstration underscored the same reality. Even the most disciplined German marksman could not match the volume or speed of sustained fire that the M1 provided. The disparity was mechanical, tactical, and psychological. Ritor recorded every observation with clinical detachment, though the weight of the implications was impossible to ignore. "We must report these findings," he said quietly, "to every command post, every front, every unit. They need to understand what they face." Weber adjusted his glasses, flipping through the notes, adding annotations about ammunition expenditure, rate of fire, and potential battlefield scenarios. "It is more than a rifle," he muttered. "It is a force multiplier." Even the smallest details were meticulously noted. The metallic ping of the clip ejection, the consistency of the gas-operated cycle, the minimal recoil compared to manual bolt operation, and the rapid reloading process. These features combined to create a weapon that was reliable, rapid, and devastating in the hands of an ordinary soldier. Unlike German semi-automatic prototypes, which required constant maintenance, careful cleaning, and were prone to failure in adverse conditions, The Garand functioned across environments: heat, cold, mud, or sand. It was resilient, forgiving, and consistently lethal. By afternoon, Ritor called a halt to the demonstrations, though his mind continued to turn over the findings. He stepped outside the facility, inhaling the crisp air and gazing over the frost-tinged grounds, imagining the distant battlefields where these rifles were already in action. Normandy, Italy, France, all theatres where German units had experienced the unnerving cadence of sustained American fire. Positions that once seemed secure were now vulnerable. The tempo of engagement had shifted. The rhythm of war had changed. Weber remained behind, consolidating the data and drafting preliminary reports for transmission to high command. The figures told a story of technological and tactical disparity. American squads armed with M1 Garands delivered 3 times the sustained fire of an equivalent German squad. They could suppress, maneuver, and assault with unprecedented efficiency. The implications extended beyond infantry combat. They influenced operational planning, resource allocation, and morale. Even elite German formations found themselves compelled to adapt under pressure, often reacting rather than dictating the flow of engagement. As the day drew to a close, the M1 Garand rested quietly on the bench, empty clip ejecting with a faint metallic ping when cycled manually. Ritor stood over it, hands clasped behind his back, reflecting on the lessons of the day. This rifle was not merely a tool, it was a weapon that had reshaped infantry combat across multiple theatres. Its engineering excellence, combined with industrial production and doctrinal integration to create a battlefield advantage that Germany could neither ignore nor easily replicate. The semi-automatic rifle, simple yet deadly, had demonstrated that technology, when aligned with strategy and industrial capacity, could redefine the very nature of warfare. Ritor finally spoke, his voice low and measured, carrying both authority and awe. Engineering may one day catch up, but by then the battlefield advantage will have already shifted. Every engagement, every defensive line, every assault will be affected. This is not a marginal improvement, it is a revolution in infantry combat. The M1 Garand is not just a rifle, it is a declaration of capability, a statement that the individual soldier can wield power once reserved for entire squads. We must understand it, respect it, and prepare accordingly, for the consequences of underestimating it will be severe. The room fell silent, the weight of the demonstration settling over all present. Engineers, officers, and observers alike understood the truth. The M1 Garand was more than a weapon. It was a tactical force multiplier, a machine of precision and reliability that elevated the American infantrymen to a level of combat efficiency that could not be matched by conventional German means. Germany faced a challenge that was as much industrial and doctrinal as it was mechanical. And in that realization, Hopman Claus Ritor and Lieutenant Weber comprehended the profound impact of a single, elegant rifle on the broader course of the war. Inside the Berlin testing facility, the atmosphere was thick with tension and the smell of oil and metal. Hopman Claus Ritor stood over the long, dark walnut stock of the M1 Garand, which lay disassembled across the workbench. Around him, a team of Wehrmacht engineers worked with meticulous care, handling each component as if it were made of glass. Gas cylinders, operating rods, camming surfaces, and the 8-round N-block clip were spread across the table, each part scrutinized under magnifying lenses. Every screw, spring, and piston was examined repeatedly. Even the smallest deviation in tolerance, a few thousandths of an inch, could render a semi-automatic rifle inoperable. Yet the Garand, when assembled, had performed flawlessly every time, firing rounds rapidly and reliably without misfeed or malfunction. Ritor's assistant, Lieutenant Weber, scrawled notes feverishly, capturing every detail with a precision born of necessity, knowing that Germany's survival in certain engagements could hinge on understanding this weapon. The engineers attempted to replicate the rifle's ingenious gas-operated mechanism, testing multiple configurations of piston lengths, spring tensions, and bolt angles. They constructed dozens of prototypes, each a variation on the Garand's design. Yet every trial ended in frustration. A rifle that functioned for a few rounds jammed under sustained fire. Another failed when exposed to mud and dust, conditions that would have been commonplace in the open fields of Normandy or the hills of Italy. Each attempted modification revealed a delicate balance between power, timing, and precision. A balance that the Americans had achieved with remarkable efficiency. Materials played a role as well. High-grade steel, machined to exacting tolerances, was difficult to obtain in quantity for Germany by 1944. Allied bombing raids disrupted supply lines, and labour shortages hampered assembly. Even with the brightest minds in the Reich devoted to the project, the possibility of mass-producing millions of Garand-quality rifles seemed increasingly remote. Ritor paused to observe the assembled engineers, their faces a mixture of determination and dawning realization. These men were not merely fighting against a rifle, they were confronting a production challenge compounded by the relentless pressures of war. Every component required precision machining, yet the factories had been optimized for proven designs like the K9-8K, artillery pieces, and aircraft. Reconfiguring the industrial apparatus to produce a reliable semi-automatic rifle at the scale needed would demand years, resources, and a stability that Germany no longer possessed. The M1 was elegant, deceptively simple to operate in the field, yet the underlying engineering was complex, requiring both skill and quality materials. Ritor ran a hand over the smooth wood of the stock, feeling the subtle curves that balanced weight and recoil, appreciating that every element had been considered to ensure rapid deployment in combat. Beyond the technical difficulties, the tactical implications were stark. On the battlefield, an American rifleman with an M1 could deliver 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute. In contrast, a soldier armed with a K9-8K, even a veteran marksman, might achieve 15 rounds at best. The semi-automatic Garand did not merely accelerate fire, it allowed the individual soldier to sustain it continuously while maintaining accuracy. This meant that an American squad, armed with M1s, could suppress entire German positions, pinning defenders behind cover and maneuvering with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Even when machine guns were unavailable, the riflemen themselves became a nearly unstoppable force. Germany's doctrine, developed around the assumption that bolt-action rifles required deliberate cycles between shots, was now inadequate. Positions that would have once held for hours could now be neutralized in minutes, and the tempo of engagements was shifting irrevocably. Ritor leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he absorbed the scope of the problem. "We can study, we can copy," he said quietly to Weber, "but we cannot deploy enough to match them. The Americans have weaponized efficiency, speed, and reliability. This is more than engineering. It is doctrine made manifest." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Even the most brilliant engineers and tactical planners could not change the reality that, with every passing day, the Americans were gaining an advantage in infantry firepower that could not be countered by conventional means. It was not merely a question of rifles, but of the intersection of industry, design, and strategy. The M1 Garand embodied a philosophy: equip the individual soldier with a tool that multiplied his effectiveness and required minimal maintenance, and the battlefield advantage followed naturally. Throughout the afternoon, the engineers continued their work, dissecting every moving part of the Garand, measuring tolerances, calculating gas pressures, and testing prototypes. Each attempt reinforced the same truth. The rifle was a triumph of design, efficiency, and manufacturing foresight. Germany's Gewehr 41 and Gewehr 43, semi-automatic rifles developed in response, suffered from reliability problems, requiring frequent cleaning, lubrication, and careful handling. They were prone to jamming under sustained fire or in adverse conditions. By comparison, the M1's gas-operated system, with its long-stroke operating rod and robust camming mechanism, tolerated mud, sand, cold, and heat with remarkable consistency. It was designed to function in the hands of a soldier under the most unforgiving conditions. Ritor observed a small demonstration where a Garand was loaded and fired repeatedly under simulated field conditions. The metallic ping of the N-block clip ejection echoed with every cycle, a simple sound that represented a technological advantage few had yet comprehended fully. Each round fired automatically, each new cartridge chambered seamlessly, without intervention beyond pulling the trigger. The engineers nodded, some muttering under their breath, acknowledging the brilliance of the design even as frustration gnawed at them. No combination of German engineering could replicate this performance reliably with the resources at hand. The realization was inescapable. Germany could theoretically reverse engineer the rifle, but equipping a division or an entire army was a logistical impossibility given the constraints of time, labor, and raw materials. The implications extended beyond the testing facility into strategic planning. Field commanders would have to contend with American squads capable of laying down sustained, precise fire that could neutralize their tactics. The M1 had shifted the paradigm of infantry combat. It was no longer sufficient to rely on concentrated firepower from machine guns or coordinated volleys of bolt-action rifles. The enemy soldier now wielded speed, accuracy, and reliability in a single compact weapon. Ritor recognized that the weapon effectively redefined what a single infantryman could achieve on the battlefield. Even small skirmishes would favor the side equipped with the semi-automatic advantage, forcing adaptations in strategy, unit formations, and engagement. Timing. As evening approached, Ritor gathered the engineers for a debriefing. Charts, schematics, and detailed field reports were spread across the long oak table. He spoke deliberately, emphasizing both the technical and tactical challenges. "This is not a simple matter of copying a design," he said. "It is a problem of scale, precision, and production. We cannot produce enough rifles of this quality to match their deployment. We can create prototypes, but the battlefield advantage they enjoy will persist." Weber added notes, documenting Ritor's observations with the meticulous care required for transmission to higher command. The men understood that this was not a failure of ingenuity. It was a confrontation with the limits of industry under wartime conditions. The engineers continued late into the night, testing tolerances, exploring alternative materials, and simulating field conditions in an attempt to uncover a workaround. Yet the results remained unchanged. The M1 Garand was robust, reliable, and mechanically elegant in a way that could not be easily replicated. Every potential improvement to German semi-automatic rifles fell short, plagued by overcomplexity, resource limitations, or fragility in combat conditions. The problem was not merely engineering but logistics. To equip even a fraction of the army with rifles capable of matching the M1 would require a complete restructuring of production, allocation of scarce materials, and trained personnel who could maintain the weapons under field conditions, all during an ongoing conflict on multiple fronts. Ritor reflected on the broader meaning of the rifle. It was more than a mechanical innovation. It was a manifestation of doctrine, production, and battlefield philosophy. The Americans had integrated design, industry, and tactics into a single, coherent system. Each soldier was empowered, each squad capable of sustained offensive and defensive action without reliance on auxiliary firepower. Germany could attempt to emulate this, but the timing, resources, and industrial disruption rendered it impossible to achieve parity quickly enough to influence ongoing campaigns. The Garand was a force multiplier in its purest sense, demonstrating how an individual's efficiency could alter entire engagements. As he finally prepared to leave the facility, Ritor paused once more at the bench, letting his gaze linger over the assembled components. The gas cylinder, operating rod, bolt, and clip mechanism seemed almost simple in isolation. Yet together they achieved a level of performance that redefined infantry combat. He understood that the challenge faced by German engineers was not merely mechanical, it was existential in tactical terms. The American soldier, armed with the M1 Garand, represented a combination of engineering mastery, industrial capability, and doctrinal innovation that Germany could not match on the same scale. Ritor's voice, low and contemplative, broke the silence. We can study, we can copy, we can dream of parity, but the battlefield advantage belongs to them. They have made engineering into strategy. And strategy wins wars. The night settled over Berlin, the testing facility dimly lit, filled with the quiet hum of machinery and the soft metallic echoes of rifle components. The M1 Garand rested, fully assembled, an elegant testament to American ingenuity. For the engineers, it was both an object of admiration and frustration, a reminder of what could be achieved with foresight, discipline, and industry operating in harmony. Germany faced a dilemma that was as much about logistics and production as it was about bullets and gas cylinders. The semi-automatic rifle had become a symbol of a broader shift. The individual soldier empowered, the squad multiplied in effect, and the battlefield forever changed. By late 1944, captured M1 Garands had been analysed across multiple Wehrmacht facilities. Field reports consistently documented overwhelming American firepower. German soldiers described sustained rifle fire in Tunisia, Sicily, and Normandy volumes that sounded like machine guns but came from semi-automatic rifles. Ritor summarized, "The M1 Garand represents a paradigm shift. A single rifleman delivers the firepower of a three-man team with our standard rifles. Replication efforts continue, yet industrial limits prevent mass deployment. The American advantage is real and persistent." Standing beside the bench, he whispered, "We underestimated the power of simplicity." Decades later, in 1964, the testing facility outside Berlin lay abandoned. Rusted machinery and crumbling walls bore witness to a war that reshaped nations. Historians studied Ritor's reports, astonished at German engineers, recognizing the M1's superiority. The metallic ping of the en-bloc clip symbolized more than a firearm. It echoed industrial ingenuity, tactical advantage, and relentless warfare. For American soldiers, the Garand allowed average infantrymen to wield unprecedented firepower in North Africa, Italy, Normandy, and beyond. Attempts to replicate it failed. Its design, production, and doctrine were uniquely American. One rifle, one soldier, could equal an entire squad. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.